in modern American history. If I had evidence, it'd be crazy. That's why I don't get into like these conspiracy theory stuff, because if you have a theory on something, throw it out there, but back it up with evidence. I want to get to this first. Trump yesterday, folks, the winning is just piling up. I mean, Donald Trump is going for it right now. Donald Trump is, one of the points I made in the primary when I endorsed Donald Trump early, a lot of people said, I'm going to go with another guy or woman, Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. I like DeSantis. I'm not too crazy about Nikki Haley. And they said, because Donald Trump is going to be a lame duck. I said, you are missing this whole thing. The whole point about a Donald Trump second term, number one, he's not really a lame duck. Yeah, he can't run again, but you have J.D. Vance, you have the Trump kids who consider running, Laura Trump. His political dynasty is not over. So he's not technically he's a lame duck, but de facto, he's not a lame duck, right? Second, the fact that he doesn't have to worry about re-election, I told you was a positive, because he's going to go in there like a freaking wrecking ball. And that's exactly what happened. Did you see this video yesterday? Donald Trump in front of all of these W.E.F. Davos elite, like foie gras eating, the elite bow tie wearing crowd. Did you see Donald Trump just tear up the Bank of America CEO right in front of his face? Folks, this made this an international story, and now people are paying attention to the censoring that happened and the debanking. That's the power of the pulpit. Check this out.
I hope you start opening your bank to conservatives, because many conservatives complain that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservative business. And I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what, but you and Jamie and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives, because what you're doing is wrong.
Folks, you understand why this is important? The debanking by a number of banks is a very real phenomenon we all know happened. Don't bullshit us, okay? Everybody knows it happened. When you win the presidency, you have the biggest bully pulpit in the world. Whatever Donald Trump says is news. He's the president. Whatever he said before was news, but not to this extent. You've got bank regulators now who are unquestionably on watch. Like, did this really happen, where people cancel for political reasons, which a lot of people suspect happened? This is the power of the bully pulpit. This is why there is no substitute for winning. Anyone telling you, oh my gosh, we're going to lose this, but it'll build political momentum for next time, bullshit. There is no substitute for winning. The bully pulpit matters. This has now become, if you go on social media, a huge topic of discussion, the debanking efforts by a lot of these what I believe were liberal banking institutions that effed over conservatives. A couple people in the chat said it was glorious. Yeah, it was. Tell it like it is. You're damn right. It was awesome. This is the benefit of having a, quote, lame duck president. He doesn't have anything to lose, and the most dangerous people in the world are people with nothing to lose. Here's Trump yesterday, again, same speech, just filleting these global collectivist Green New Deal watermelon policies. Watermelon, yeah. Green on the outside, commie red on the inside. Everybody knows this is a scam. Everybody knows this is a proxy for communism. That's where the watermelon comes from. Green on the outside, red on the inside. Everybody knows it. Here he has taken it to the Green New scam. Check this out.
I terminated the ridiculous and incredibly wasteful Green New Deal. I call it the Green New scam. Withdrew from the one-sided Paris Climate Accord and ended the insane and costly electric vehicle mandate. We're going to let people buy the car they want to buy. I declared a national energy emergency, and that's so important, national energy emergency, to unlock the liquid gold under our feet and pave the way for rapid approvals of new energy infrastructure. The United States has the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we're going to use it. Not only will this reduce the cost of virtually all goods and services, it'll make the United States a manufacturing superpower and the world capital of artificial intelligence and crypto.
Now, the World Economic Forum collectivists lost their shit over this. They lost it because folks, their term for all this, their buzz term is collective action. Collective action is a proxy term for globalists. What they mean is, individual countries shouldn't act in their own best interest. They should act in the best interest of the globe, collectivist action. Of course, that's ridiculous because different countries have different governing systems. Some of them are totalitarian, authoritarian. The United States needs to take care of the United States first. But because the United States is the richest country in the world, because of our system of our constitutional republic and our entrepreneurial free market system, the collectivists around the world hate us. So they want this leveling equity bullshit where they take all that, they basically take the spoils of our hard work. It happens not just at the individual level where people want to tax, the so-called rich to pay people who don't work. It happens around the globe too. That's what they mean by collective action. I want you to watch this W.E.F. elite here, losing her shit over this. They're in full panic mode. And I want you to listen at the end where she says, hey, the best thing we can do is ignore this stuff. You're going to ignore the United States? Are you sure? Be careful what you ask for. You may get it because your collectivist institutions, whether it's NATO or other institutions for security or energy cooperation, rely on us, not you. Check this out.
One way to look at the Trump administration and what to expect from them in the future is that it is an abrupt reversal of the Biden administration. I think my biggest concern would be a move away from global collective action on pressing problems like climate and security and public health, to name a few. There seems to be a rejection of COP already, moving out of the Paris Agreement, emphasis on carbon-based fuel production and a canceling of the green. So I think this is quite harmful to prospects of international cooperation, and my hope would be that the rest of the world would ignore this rather than learn from it. But if people view the Trumpian moment as something to learn from, then I think we're in big trouble for the world economy.
If they view the Trumpian moment as something to learn from, the world economy is in trouble. It doesn't matter how many people vote for a different new way forward. The collectivists around the world are telling their people, hey, basically ignore this guy. The old way is the way. Don't let it happen. We got to keep the squeeze on these people, folks, and expose them. These great reset crowd people who want this collectivist action bullshit, we're going to expose them at every opportunity. So let me get back to what I was talking about in the beginning of the show, the JFK, RFK, MLK files. Here's a video of Donald Trump saying he's going to release these. I want to discuss a very specific problem with it, though, because Tulsi Gabbard at the ODNI, Director of National Intelligence, has not been confirmed yet. So we have a problem. If you listen to some of the Mike Benz, Mike Benz, our deep state specialist, if you listen to some of his audio on his X feed, he was doing a bunch of interviews, and he was saying that the person in charge right now at the ODNI, the acting, is basically a DEI person who is a holdover from the prior administration. So if she's responsible for the declassification, ladies and gentlemen, good luck on what you're going to get. I'll tell you what I heard. I'll tell you what I think they're hiding. And I'll tell you why it matters, most importantly. It's a very sensitive topic for me. Check this out.
Lastly, sir, we have an executive order ordering the declassification of files relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years, for decades. And everything will be revealed.
Now, everything will be revealed. I sincerely hope that that happens. Folks, the issue we're going to have is the person in charge now, before we get Tulsi in there, is definitely a Biden holdover who has an interest, like some deep state people, one of them being Mike Pompeo. I thought he was one of us. He's not one of us. In keeping these things secret. Here's the question, I believe the big question about the declassification, specifically of JFK, RFK, and MLK. Was the government involved in using these people for specific propaganda efforts and manipulating them through CIA folks or other intelligence people? Like I said, when we were in training, we were told it was just Oswald. Not that I necessarily believe that. But I want you to listen to Pompeo. This is an excellent interview. Pompeo, who has zero interest in getting this stuff out there. He was the director of the CIA, Sex State, right? Here he is with John Stossel, who's a libertarian. And Stossel's like, hey, man, this is 60 years ago. Like, are we going to release this information or what? I want you to listen to his words very specifically, because he says there are still some issues outstanding, even though it's 60 years ago, that could impact us right now. I think he's talking about some sensitive CIA programs that may involve some pretty significant information. However, we need to see it. It's been 60 years. This is how conspiracy theories flower when the government hides information. Check this out.
Why'd you fight to keep the JFK files secret?
Because I was trying to keep Americans safe. And by the way, don't paint with too broad a brush. 99.6% of the JFK files are public today.
But it was 60 years ago.
John, not everything was 60 years ago. And I don't want to spend a lot of time walking through this, but suffice it to say, the definition of a document covered by this statute that you're referring to, it's a little bit wonky, but suffice it to say, if Congress holds a hearing tomorrow on the Kennedy assassination, the documents generated tomorrow will be part of those files. Those would be tomorrow, they'd be 60 seconds old, not 60 years old. And last thing I'll say is there are things that happened 60 years ago that are still important to keep in the vault. There are lots of things that happened that long ago that still are appropriate not to release.
That to me confirms it, that there is some deeper level of CIA involvement here that the United States government is unwilling to tell us. Is it the CIA's role in the assassination? The answer, folks, is I don't know. My suspicion is probably not. That the CIA, I believe, and we'll see when it comes out, and I'm applying the Bongino rule here, so I want to just be candid with you. I'm speculating. But listening to and having read a bunch of material on this because it fascinates me, my suspicion is that although the CIA may not have been involved in the actual trigger pulling incident, that the CIA may have known more than they're letting on, and they don't want to shock the conscience of the American public by releasing that all, because it's going to basically rewrite history. And, of course, there's another theory out there. I saw a couple people on X saying, hey, it's a big nothing burger. They're going to release it and you're going to find out nothing. Personally, I doubt that. My experience with the government is that they don't dedicate an extreme amount of resources to keeping secrets secret if they don't have something to hide. I told you, I remember when I was an agent and I got sent over to Afghanistan. And they brought me in, and I was doing the lead advance, and they made me sign an NDA. It was like we were in this skiff, and it was all like deep six and stuff. Like, oh, we're going to Afghanistan. Obama's going to land in a war zone. You know, make sure nobody knows. Don't tell your wife you're going to Hawaii or something like that for a mission. And I get out in the parking lot. A guy calls me on the phone. He goes, hey, I heard you're doing the lead for Afghanistan. What I'm getting at is the government has a really hard time keeping secrets. Why have they exerted so much effort to keep this secret? There is something there that involves the CIA, clearly. And I think it's what they knew and what they let happen rather than what they did. Tell me if I'm wrong. I could be. I'm speculating, however, based on a good amount of research on the topic. We'll see what's up with that. Trump's executive orders yesterday and other actions, though, the winning continues, folks. It was just it's been, since Monday, such a deluge of information. I got to be straight with you, man. It is really, this is like Jim put together the show last night. And it's like, I'm not even going to get to half this stuff because so much is happening so fast. It's really hard to keep track. One of the things I've warned you about repeatedly, because it freaks me out, is CBDCs. Hold on, let me get some coffee here. Central bank digital currencies. Folks, if you want a totalitarian society, allowing the government's central bank to create a digital currency is the way to do it. It would be an absolute disaster. The government would basically have a digital trail of everywhere you spent money. Firearms store, you spending money online, what are you doing online? The government would know everything. They'll say they won't, but they will. They're definitely going to track it. Also, one of the things about a central bank digital currency that freaks me out is that the government could implement negative interest rates for the first time. I don't want to get too in the weeds on it, but the gist of it is this. The way to monetize the debt is to implement negative interest rates. And what's a negative interest rate? It's exactly how it sounds. You put your money in a bank, you get a positive interest rate, right? You get a return. What if they were negative? Now, you're probably saying in the chat, right? Michael, you're a smart guy. Well, then there's an easy way out of that. You just take your freaking money out of the bank. If the bank's taking your money every day through negative interest rates, which is what they'd be doing, you take it out. You put two and two together. If you have a central bank digital currency and there's no paper, there ain't no way to take it out. You could devalue the currency dramatically through negative interest rates and surveil every single person. Unusual whales breaking. President Trump, again, folks, the winning is freaking ridiculous. There's so much winning this week, it's like hard to keep track of the freaking winning President Trump signs executive order to ban central bank digital currencies. I freaking love this guy. I love this guy. Can you guys, folks in the chat who doubted me, some of you doubted me. It's okay. You know I love you guys, the Bongino army. But some of you doubted me during the primary. And you said, listen, this guy's going to be a lame duck. And I told you, that's the greatest gift possible is a president who knows where the bodies are buried from his first term and doesn't have to worry at all about re-election, especially a guy with the balls of Donald Trump. This stuff is all happening. It's almost like impossible to keep track of it all. I'm not even done. We have this broken down into executive orders and other actions. Pardons yesterday for pro-lifers. We have Trump on interest rates. This is the only area I disagree with. I'm not here to be a sycophant to anyone. I'm going to explain why coming up in a second. I love the president. We're not going to agree on everything. He's always been fair to me either way. But this is the only thing I disagree with him on. And again, in the chat, chime in. You think I'm wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. It's okay. I'd love to hear it. Quick break, right back to the show. A lot going on. Folks, if you have a dog they smell bad or they're itchy, you're going to want to hear from our new sponsor, Coat Defense. It started as a human skincare company, but they became deeply troubled by all the toxic medications and topical treatments commonly used on dogs. I had to give Lucy a bath last night. She was a mess. She went outside, created total chaos last night. They created a non-toxic, quickly effective solution to common skin and coat issues with dogs, remedies the issues, and helps prevent these troubles from returning. I use it on Lucy. They sent me a sample. I love it. Give your dog a happier, longer, healthy life. If your dog's itchy and all the pills and shots aren't helping, Coat Defense works because many itchy dogs, they have an overgrowth of yeast on the skin, in the folds, paws, or inside the ears. You've seen it, which can clear up in a day or two using Coat Defense in their products. So order it today. We use it on Lucy. We love it. You can save 15% on your first order at coatdefense.com and be sure to enter code DAN when you check out. That's code, common spelling, C-O-A-T. Coatdefense.com for 15% off. Enter code DAN. Support our sponsors, folks. They're very good to us. We pick them wisely. Help give your dog relief and avoid those expensive vet visits. Coatdefense.com, 15% off. Something better for your dog. Okay, back to the show. It didn't end there. Donald Trump not only pardoned the people involved in J6, which was unquestionably a weaponization of government in the process. Here he is yesterday pardoning, 23 pro-lifers who were prosecuted using everything from the FACE Act and every other thing. It's amazing. BLM and Antifa, you can burn down a freaking city. Nothing happens to you. You get a $3 million donation from a major blue chip company. But you dare go in front of an abortion clinic, you're going to find yourself in the clink. Check this out.
A set of pardons for peaceful pro-life protesters who were prosecuted by the Biden administration for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Do you know how many?
I believe it's 23, sir.
23 people were prosecuted. They should not have been prosecuted. Many of them are elderly people. They should not have been prosecuted. This is a great honor to sign this.
You see it? I notice this is catching some steam online. My Rock'em Sock'em robots, if you're wondering where the other guy is, he's gone. So he's going to have to fight himself. We threw him on. I think he broke. Folks, this is the way you do it. Rock'em Sock'em. Keep punching. Sorry, it was a little late. I feel good today. I ask you, I'm like, do I sound a little like low energy? I'm sorry. I promise you, I feel great. I don't mean to sound that way. It's just my voice is struggling a little bit from the inauguration fungus. Is that what that is? I'm wondering what this freaking new emoji is because I'm blind as a freaking bat. Is that Rock'em Sock'em Robots? Yesterday, that thing was filtering through the live chat. And I'm like, what the hell is? I thought it was the Fugazi. So that's Rock'em Sock'em. This is what he's doing. They're still hung up on, did you see the Marjorie Taylor Greene video, by the way? It's on my X feed if you want to see it. They accost Marjorie Taylor Greene up in Congress about the J6 thing. They're still upset about that. And what does he do? He pardons pro-lifers. He keeps hitting them, and he's not letting them get their sea legs. This reminds me, although I don't like Arnold Schwarzenegger at all, obviously he was a fake Republican, but he ran for governor, and this guy wins the primary on the Democrat side. I forget his name, but Schwarzenegger drops like a $6-7 million ad bomb on his head on day one. And the guy can't keep up with it and never really got his sea legs back. This is what's happening with the media now. They want to ask about J6, but then they're upset about the pro-lifers, and then they're upset about the JFK files, and then they're upset about Trump exposing Bank of America. They don't know what to do. The Rock'em Sock'em Robots, I know we kind of F around a lot, but it's not funny. Like, I'm dead serious. This is a real strategy. Again, Bannon, a friend of the movement, calls it the flood the zone strategy. I don't care what you call it. The minute they get upset about one thing, he picks another one. Here is the one thing, because Donald Trump and I don't agree on everything. And let me just say in advance, folks, and I'm not name dropping, so please, that's just lame and stupid, and you sound like a freaking dork. I know the president, okay, not well. We've had dinner a couple times. He was kind enough to invite us to his club, but I haven't been with him a lot. So it's just like reverse name dropping. But the times I have spoken to him, one of the things I always found very kind of endearing about him is there's this rumor out there about President Trump. It's a media-driven rumor, of course, that you either have to agree with him or he is going to isolate you to the phantom zone and you're out of his inner circle. I'm telling you that's total bullshit. I could bring my wife in here as a witness to our dinner in Bedminster when she was just us three, and I talked to him about abortion. We disagree on abortion. It's okay. It's okay. This is the one area I do disagree with him a little bit. Donald Trump wants interest rates to come down. Folks, I think that's a real mistake. I believe me, as an investor, significant investor in Rumble and the stock market, it would benefit me for interest rates to come down because it's easy money for companies. However, I really don't think it's good for the economy right now. We've got to suck this inflation out. I'm not saying we need an interest rate hike, but I don't think we need interest rates to come down right now. We got to dry up a little bit of the money supply. But listen to him. Here he is saying, hey, I'm going to squeeze these guys and we'll see what happens. Check this out.
The interest rates will come down.
You said that you would demand that the interest rates come down.
Well, I would put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to you?
Yeah.
You know where this comes from? I've had a lot of conversations about this with him. He's a real estate guy. And he's a business guy. And obviously, as a business guy, I'll just ask you a simple question, folks. You're a business guy. You have to take out a $10 million loan to build up a property you renovated. You want to pay 5% interest on the loan or you want to pay 10%? Okay, thanks. 5%, correct? That's where this comes from because he's a business guy. I don't fault him for it. I'm not mad at him. I just think it's a mistake. If we push interest rates down and inflation explodes, he's going to have a far bigger problem to deal with. Because, folks, as you've seen with inflation, he's like, shut up, right? Do I have to shut up? Tell me to shut up. I mean, am I good? Okay. Folks, is this annoying? I know these economic segments, people hate them. If interest rates come down too much and money starts flooding through the economy again and inflation ticks up to 5-7%, we're going to have a lot big problems to deal with, okay? You don't want to pay $72 for cat food. That's why. The only area I disagree, I think we should stop. I think we should definitely chill on that. Okay, moving on. Here's another thing I would like Donald Trump to really get on right away. I know he's looking at it. I know his team is looking at it. They were all over this. Folks, the European Union is totally effing us over. They're effing us at the drive-through, Leo Getz style. They are screwing us over. I've seen it with Rumble. I don't know if you know this, but the European Union is pushing this misinformation and disinformation laws. And that's why Rumble is not in a lot of foreign countries. We're not in France. We're not in Brazil. Because Chris from Rumble, Pavlovsky, who I admire greatly, Chris was told by foreign countries, hey, you need to censor this stuff or we're going to pull your site down. You know what Chris said? Double-barreled F you. We're pulling the site down in advance because Chris is a good guy. And thank you for Rand Paul for the shout-out for Rumble, saying that the whistleblower, Chia Morella, that the only place you were allowed to talk about that was Rumble. And that's correct. Thank you, Rand Paul, for the shout-out. Bottom line, we have to fight this right away because American tech companies are going to be destroyed. True Social, Rumble, and others if this EU censoring continues. Here's Mike Benz on the depth of the problem. I know the Trump team's on this. They're going to squeeze on it, but it's important we move quick. Check this out.
Right now, as we speak, the National Endowment for Democracy is a signatory to the EU Code of Practice on Disinformation. I'll say that again. Trump's probably most pernicious CIA cutout, being funded by the federal government as we speak, is still a proud signatory to a European law forcing U.S. companies to censor whatever the EU says is disinformation. That has to be ended immediately. There should be no U.S.-funded NGO, no third-party group, no government blessing whatsoever. We need to be declaring war on the Digital Censorship Act. Sorry, the Digital Services Act. Anyone who is endorsing that cannot get a single dollar of U.S. government grant or contractual support, and we need to route this out root and stem. So the fact that Biden had government agencies and pseudo-government agencies work with the U.S. with the EU government in order to kill U.S. companies, that dark age is over. We're here for the golden age now.
Folks, I want you to look this up. I'm not one to assign homework, okay? I'm not your school teacher. I'm not your preacher, your imam, your rabbi, or anything. But if there was a homework assignment and you were interested in it, I strongly encourage you over the weekend to look up the DSA, the Digital Services Act. It is a big deal. It is a means for European Union countries to shut down tech companies that don't censor. It is a huge deal. And we need the Trump team, and I know they're on it, to battle this thing full force. By the way, thank you to everyone who leaves tips in the chat. I just want to say in advance, I am not here for more of your money. We have sponsors that pay for the show to keep it free. It is very generous of you. I see D and someone else, $5, $2. I am the one guy here not asking you for money. You don't have to tip here at all. Of course you don't have to. I appreciate it, but it's totally unnecessary. We're doing A-OK. Save your money. I deeply appreciate it. It means the world to me. But tip some other creators and stuff. Save your money. We're doing fine. The sponsors are great to us. We have a great show, and I want you to keep your money. Times are tough right now. Thank you, but no need to tip. I'm actually thinking about turning that feature off if I can, but I just feel bad. Sorry, got a little distracted. Hey, Moink, another one of these great sponsors. It said that 4 companies control over 80% of the U.S. meat industry. Reports say China now controls the largest portion of U.S. pork. These companies use mob-like tactics to crush American family farms, and with the additives they're putting in our food, Americans are stuck with sketchy meat. So what can we do about this? A company I've been following for a long time, Moink. They're going to take care of you, family farms, and your family's food security. Their business is simple. Moink's meat comes from animals raised outdoors, where a pig is free to be a pig. Farmers are given an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. I spoke to the owner of the company. She's an amazing lady. They deliver meat straight to your doorstep at prices you can actually afford. Born, raised, and harvested right here in the USA. Support American family farms and join the Moink movement today. Pick up some great tasting meat at moinkbox.com/Bongino now and get free wings for life. They're the best wings you'll ever taste for free. Check them out before a limited time. Spelled Moink, M-O-I-N-K, moinkbox.com/Bongino. That's moinkbox.com/Bongino. The meat is absolutely amazing. And our last sponsor today, Tax Network USA. Is your risk high that an IRS agent's about to show up at your home over unpaid taxes or unfiled returns, or that the IRS may freeze your bank accounts? Listen, understanding your IRS risk levels help you decide how quickly you need to act. So take my advice and find out. Call the experts at Tax Network USA and share your situation. They'll advise if they believe your risk level is high, moderate, or low. It's a free service for my audience, and it's 100% confidential. If your risk is high and you want to resolve your IRS problems, Tax Network USA will take steps to help you do it. Nobody knows the IRS better. In fact, Tax Network USA is a preferred direct line, so they know which agents to deal with and which to avoid. They've resolved over $1 billion in tax debt, so whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their genius strategies are designed to quickly settle your tax problems. Discovering your current IRS risk level is free, fast, and confidential. It's a smart first step in solving your tax problems. Call Tax Network USA at 1-800-958-1000. That's 1-800-958-1000. Or visit tnusa.com/Dan. tnusa.com/Dan. Thanks, Tax Network USA. All right. They were coming fast and furious yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. All of them. These EOs, these other actions. Donald Trump is in the FO portion of the round, and find out. I'm happy to see it. Yesterday, however, a federal judge in Seattle blocked, at least temporarily, President Trump's attempt to rescind birthright citizenship to illegals per the AP. He called it blatantly unconstitutional. Let me give you, you know what? First, let me play this clip from the 5, the Queen of the Currents, which doesn't sound so great. Like, that's me. Is that me? Is that me or Jim? That's me? That's actually my voice. You guys, I don't know what you did with the echo feature. Let me play this first. Here is the great, the legend, Greg Gutfeld, who I watched the 5 to watch Greg and Jessica go at it. Again, folks, it's not personal. I don't dislike Jessica. She was always very nice to me. I just disagree with her politically. I think the stuff she says is frankly pretty stupid. But Greg always tears her a new one. Here's Jessica on birthright citizenship. Notice how she doesn't even answer the question. I'm not even sure she really knows what it means. Oh, yeah, it means you were born. No, this is a big legal issue right now. It's not just you were born here. You have to actually read the 14th Amendment. Check this out.
You vote to revoke birthright citizenship for the children of people who are here legally.
Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, I do.
Tell me about it. Tell me what birthright citizenship meant.
Well, I think when Donald Trump was talking about it and disparaging people who are here, he was talking about undocumented people who come and drop their anchor babies. He wasn't talking about people who are here on student visas, people who are here on H-1B visas.
You're always going to choose this weird exception.
No,
the fact is the system is being gamed. Americans voted for Donald Trump because they saw these systems, these institutions being gamed. The asylum issue, the birthright citizen issue, Title IX issues. Every single part of society was being gamed by the left. And finally, Americans got pushed too far. The point is, you don't have to like everything in the restaurant to like the restaurant. There are things, I go to a restaurant, I don't eat any seafood, but I like that restaurant because it's got steak. There are things that Trump will do that I will disagree with, but the entire package is as close as you're going to get to what Americans want.
You guys are so funny. You guys are funny. I tell you, don't worry about tip. We get more tips now. You would think that was like a psyop, like I was reverse. I love you guys. Forget it. I'm not saying it anymore. You want a tip? Knock yourself down. I love it. I appreciate it, but I wasn't playing a game with you. But you guys are funny. I love you guys. The Bongino Army, man. I don't think people know. I really don't. Do you know sometimes, I don't want to get distracted. I want to get back to this, but just one quick thing. Do you have any idea how many times I'm in a little group of people? It's rare when I get out, but I do. And they'll say something like when I was at this Facebook event and I was talking to a bunch of folks. I met Chamath Palihapitiya. I played his clips before. Super nice guy. But I was talking to a bunch of people and they're stunned that we're the #1 live stream in the United States for politics on just about every 4 out of 5 days of the week. They were stunned. They have no idea how powerful this Bongino Army is. You guys are amazing. And I want you to know I appreciate it. Here. Getting back to that, Greg is accurate, and Jessica, of course, is not, the queen of the Karens. Ladies and gentlemen, birthright citizenship by the 14th Amendment, as always, there's a clause in there, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, there is an open question. I want you to remember these two terms. You want to sound smart in your group of legal friends? Ask them if there is a difference between political and territorial jurisdiction and watch them spin their wheels. Territorial jurisdiction would be the idea if you're born in the United States under any conditions whatsoever, you are in fact a citizen. No, that has never been a fully legally decided decision. There are a lot of legal scholars who believe that the 14th Amendment, interpreted the right way, meant political jurisdiction. That if you were born in the United States to American citizens or people subject to the political jurisdiction thereof, then that's what they meant. If you're born overseas to 2 American citizens, if me and Paula had another kid on our trip to Spain, they're still American citizens because they're subject to political jurisdiction, not territorial. Folks, this is not a decided question. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. And I don't believe, if you go and look at the history of this with Dred Scott and slavery, that the people who wrote the 14th Amendment meant it to mean territorial jurisdiction, that if you're born here, no questions asked, you're a citizen. I don't believe it. And I think anyone telling you otherwise is lying. And I think if it gets to the Supreme Court, they could have a real problem. And I'm going to tell you why. Gorsuch is a hardcore originalist. Just look at the McGirt decision. And if Gorsuch is going to play it straight, he made a big decision with Oklahoma and McGirt turning over all that land. That was a huge decision. That's caused a tremendous ripple effect in Oklahoma and elsewhere. Look up the decision if you know what I mean. He's like, hey, we wrote a treaty, that's it. Well, folks, if you're going to go back and look at why we wrote the 14th Amendment the way we did, I don't believe it involved territorial jurisdiction at all. It was political. Don't let them spin your wheels on this. Jessica doesn't know what she's talking about. Greg does. Really smart guy. Speaking of deportations and border protections, folks, they're happening. Look at this. Donald Trump, folks, that's why we titled today The Winning. The Winning doesn't, I don't know how many times I can write this headline into the show. Every single day we could do, The Winning continues, it's Monday edition. The Winning continues Friday edition. Border encounters drop sharply as Trump launches crackdown on illegal immigration. This is like the most unshocking headline you've ever seen. That's true. Mayorkas said the border was closed and this would never happen. You tell people cross the border illegally and we're going to deport you, and you start the deportation flights, and shocker, people don't want to come here. This is not hard. President Donald Trump signed a number of border security measures on Monday. Folks, there's a line of people now trying to get back to Mexico and other countries who are here illegally. None of this is surprising. Why? Check this video out from Fox. This is Bill Malugin talking about roundups starting already. There's a way not to get involved in a roundup. Don't break the law and come here illegally. This isn't hard. I don't hate anybody. My wife's a legal immigrant in the country. But if she had to follow the rules, then damn it, so do you. This isn't difficult. Check this out.
I'm not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
ICE Boston quickly takes down its next targets, including this illegal alien from Brazil who has an Interpol red notice for armed robbery. This Salvadoran illegal alien charged locally with rape and released by a sanctuary jurisdiction.
Señor, ¿cómo se llama?
And this Dominican illegal alien charged with assault with a deadly weapon and heroin trafficking. Officers also arrested this Guatemalan MS-13 gang member facing gun charges. ICE says he was released from local custody just the day before. Their detainer request was ignored because of sanctuary policies.
Folks, let me ask you a question. What sane American objects to this? An MS-13 member in the country illegally. So he's a criminal for entering the country illegally, period. But then there's accusations that this guy is apparently some significant gang member in the United States who's going to cause a bunch of chaos, because I told you yesterday, a small group of people caused an inordinate amount of violent crime. Who is going to object to this? The answer is crazy people are going to object to this. But there's a new sheriff in town. I'm going to circle back to the beginning of the show because I can't say it enough. Some people disagreed with me. Dan, we don't need Donald Trump. We need DeSantis. We need Haley. I love DeSantis. Again, not a huge fan. I do. I love Ron DeSantis. I got a video of him coming up. He's fantastic. I just didn't think it was his time, period. D, how much did that bother me? We had all these DeSantis. I'm like, guys, I love the guy. It's just not his time. Donald Trump has 4 more years to get things done. He is going to come in the FO portion of the F around. And this is exactly what he's doing. Do you see now the benefit of it? All right, I'm beating this up. But look at the people he hired too. Here's his press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, who I adore. Here she is saying, hey man, this is just the beginning. Like, we're not done. This thing has just started. You don't like it, like, get on the train or get run over by it. Check this out.
Securing the southern border and deporting illegal immigrants from this country, President Trump is sending a very strong message to people around this world. If you are thinking about breaking the laws of the United States of America, you will be returned home, you will be arrested, you will be prosecuted. Do not come.
I love this woman. I saw her at a Miami Heat game down in Miami. I think she's a Celtics fan. And it was the finals. And she yells across. She probably remembers this. Bongino! Anyone who calls you only by your last name, I love you right away. It's like a New York thing and a Boston thing. This woman is going to be a total ball buster. And I mean that in a good way. This is what's happening right now. Now, I want you to notice something in addition. Here's a couple of the educational portions of the edutainment portion of the show, educational entertainment. We talked about political territorial jurisdiction. That is not a settled argument, okay? Anyone telling you that is lying to you. They're not. If they're lawyers, they should be disbarred because they're too stupid. Another thing I want to address is it's interesting. Now, I know the left isn't the hierarchy and they don't care about hypocrisy, but it's still up to us to propose to the normies out there and to show them how hypocritical the left is. Do you remember when Arizona back in 2010 instituted SB 1070? The left called it the Show Me Your Papers law. And they basically said Arizona law enforcement officials can involve themselves in the immigration function. Do you guys remember that? Jan Brewer, it was a long time ago. You may not. It doesn't really matter. If you don't remember it, the left went crazy and said Arizona cannot enforce immigration law. It is a federal issue, and they fought like crazy. There are thousands of hours of video on this. Now, Donald Trump's in office. He is the head of the federal government in the executive branch. And because the left doesn't care about hypocrisy, all they care about is hierarchy and taking down and dismantling structures of power they're not involved in, like Donald Trump, they take the exact opposite approach. Here's Big Tish James up in New York, the New York State Attorney General, a hack and a tyrant and a life loser. New York has laws that protect immigrants and limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement efforts. Wait, keep that up. I thought it was a federal issue. Now it's a state issue again. Those laws should be followed by law enforcement and officials in our state. I'll always uphold our laws and protect immigrant New Yorkers. Now, you see, now it's a state issue. Go look it up. Someone in the chat, Anita, put up a link to SB 1070 Arizona, and you'll read the exact opposite argument. The exact opposite argument by the left. Arizona can't enforce immigration law. It's a federal thing. Tish James in New York. New York can ignore federal immigration law. It's a state thing. These people are freaking frauds. Now, Tom Homan is another FAFO guy. You know Tom Homan. We love him. Tom's an amazing guy. He's the border czar. I hope Tom Homan is sincere on this. I have no reason to believe otherwise. Tom Homan's like, hey, man, 18 U.S.C. 1324, harboring illegal aliens. If you're going to be one of these government officials that's going to hide illegal aliens breaking the law, you may find yourself in the clink too. Check this out.
Quickly, what happens to a mayor or local police department chief that is under Democratic leadership that obstructs ICE in your federal agents that are helping get these deportations? What happens to them?
Well, first of all, if they don't want to help us get the hell out of the way, we're going to do it. If I got sent twice the amount of resources to that city, that's what we're going to do. If they would give us access to the jail, that would mean less agents in the community. For them pushing back and not letting us in the jail, it just means more agents are going to be in the community, so they're hurting themselves. Finally, I'll say this. They need to educate themselves. They need to review this. Title 8, United States Code 1324, III. Read about that and don't cross that line, because it is a felony to harbor and conceal an illegal alien from ICE. Read the statute, don't cross that line.
Of course, producer Guy and Jim are always here to do you a favor. 18 U.S.C. 1324. You can read it yourself right there. Bringing in and harboring certain aliens. What do you think? Tom Homan's making it up? It's right there. Folks, I'm telling you right now, the fact that this guy is in his second term and has absolutely nothing to lose, you have the potential for the greatest 4-year run in the golden age of MAGA Republican politics you're going to see in your lifetime. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm not one of these Eckhart Tolle power on now guys. I don't really care about any of that stuff, but the hard reality is we only live in the now. And you are living right now. I hope you understand this. You guys get this in the golden age of MAGA politics. There is one obstacle for us transforming the government completely, and that's the House. The House has a slim majority. We have enough in the Senate if we use reconciliation to do big things. We also have a couple of Democrats like Fetterman who may come over. By the way, I did the Fed. You guys see me walk in with the Fetterman thing? You guys see this? I never wear hoodies. It is like global warming in Florida. It's like 40 degrees. That's obviously a joke. So I wore my Don't Get Dead. You see this? The Don't Get Dead hoodie. I came in rocking the Fetterman look today. I should have kept it on for the show. But Fetterman, we have other people who may come over with us on the other side. The shorts, right? I know. What do you think? Should we do shorts? All our proceeds go to. It's a great way to raise money for charity. We gave away a ton of money thanks to the shirts. Okay, back to the show. Here's Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, showing you again how this is done, dealing with these freaking media lunatics. They are not undocumented, folks. There's a reason they don't have documents. The reason they don't have documents is they decided not to get them because they broke the law. He gives a great example here, and this is how you should deal with the media. You never, ever accept the premise of their euphemism questions. Undocumented. They're illegal aliens. They are aliens to the country by legal standard, and they are here illegally. That is the term. Check this out.
Florida is home to hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants who are working in areas.
Well, you know, so the federal government has made clear that the statutory term, it's not they're illegal aliens. That's the statutory term. That's what it is. And I think it's to try to water down. I mean, like undocumented, it's like if I get in my car and I forget my wallet, okay, I don't have my document on me, like my driver's license. but I mean, I still have a right to drive. I just made a mistake. This is intentional to come in illegally. And it's not just a question of missing a document. It's a question of, you violated the law that were very clear and knowingly and with the help of the cartels in many cases.
Yes. Dude, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be distracted, but Uncle Sam in the chat has probably the most genius idea. He says, Dan, you need the Fetterman package, the hoodie and the shorts combo. He may be a Democrat, but being that the money goes to charity, I'm sure he wouldn't object either. I don't know. Does he have like a trademark on his name? That's actually not a bad idea. The Don't Get Dead hoodie and shorts. I actually love that idea. The John Friend. Maybe can someone send an email to his office and tell him it's for charity? There it is. There it is right there. Guy pulled it offline. There he is, the Fetterman. That is a great idea, Uncle Sam. Thank you. This is why I love you guys. And thank you to Speak the Truth, McGroin, one of the senior members of the McGroin crowd, for putting up SB 1070 in Arizona. You can read it yourself. But that's how you deal with these media goons, folks. Do not let them play the euphemisms game. They are not undocumented. The reason they don't have documents is because they're here illegally. End of story. That is an appropriate and proper legal term if you look at the terminology. Don't let the media do the euphemisms game. If you win the word games, you win the argument before even making it. You understand that? If you start talking about things like, here's words you should never use. Undocumented individuals, throw that right in the garbage. They were illegal aliens. And gender-affirming care. There is no such thing. There is no such thing as gender-affirming care. The only gender-affirming care is your original gender when you were born, because that's your gender. Don't use these terms. Now, Donald Trump is headed out right now to California and North Carolina to review the damage from the devastating wildfires. Here is the California Attorney General, this guy, Rob Bonta. Now, you think this guy would be concerned about finding the arsonists, people who are burning the state down? No. Illegal immigration is so important, specifically to the state of California, to refill the population, to prevent them from losing House of Representatives members in their demographic destiny argument, which they try to make all the time. We played the cut. And the Electoral College, that even as the place burns, this is their big concern, is this illegal immigration raid, because they don't want to lose population. That's what's really behind this. Check this out.
This is, however, something he promised, right? It's something that you knew was coming, that your fellow attorneys general knew was coming, and you were able to prepare for. I'm wondering what your conversations are like now and what your other major concerns are moving forward. Are you preparing for other actions that you think President Trump will make good on?
That's right. We've been preparing for weeks and months. Our ability to move quickly with our briefs and our filing, and many states working together, is proof positive of that. The president did make a promise on birthright citizenship and revoking it, and I made it a promise too, and I'm keeping it, that I will see you in court when you break the law and violate the U.S. Constitution. That promise applies here, and it applies to any other action that he takes. We're looking closely at his other executive orders, including trying to use the military for civil immigration enforcement activities on American soil. We're looking at some of the other executive orders, how they impact our transgender communities. And so we expect this not to be the first overreach and unlawful and unconstitutional action by the president. And every time and any time he violates the law, it violates the U.S. Constitution, we will see him in court and we will stop him.
Again, a couple points here. Number one, you see how this clown joker from California, the Attorney General Bonta, is now back to immigration as a state issue again, when they made the exact opposite argument with SB 1070. And second, the guy's state is burning to the ground. Billions of dollars in property damage. Entire neighborhoods wiped out. You've got arsonists potentially behind some of these fires. And what's this dipshit involved in? He's concerned about illegals, gang members, and others being deported back to the countries they came from because they came here illegally. By the way, thank you to Hoyden993, all caps. Great show, Dan and crew. I hope you think so. I was a little nervous because I know my voice sounds really terrible, and I was afraid it was going to kind of come off bad. But I think once we kind of got into flow, everything was okay. My voice is still a little scratchy. All right, a couple more things I want to get to today. We got some time left for you here because they're important. Elizabeth Warren, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski are engaged in this battle to keep Pete Hegseth from being the Secretary of Defense. It's not going to happen. Hegseth has the votes. He is going to get through. Bank on it, cash that check, spend the money, okay? However, let me just tell you how to kind of direct your political anger here and I mean this in a tactical way, not an emotional way. Forget Susan Collins. I don't get emotional about these things. Susan Collins from Maine she's not a Republican, okay? She runs as a Republican. She's the best you're going to get. Don't waste any time. She's a political survivor up there. I'm serious. The fact that she's fighting against Pete is annoying. She's not going to sink the nomination. He's fine. Even if Mitch McConnell votes no, JD's the tiebreaker, Vice President Vance. So don't worry about that. Murkowski's a different story. The reason I get so angry at Murkowski is she is a freaking Republican from a blood red state in Alaska. Folks, this woman has to go. She will do anything to stay in power. They have manipulated voting systems. She is run as a write-in after losing primaries, the Joe Miller thing. She is a disgrace. She is the single most destructive Republican up there, to the point where I've never told you ever, to vote for a Democrat over a Republican. And I'm not sure I'm telling you that, but this is the first time I'm considering it. Because she's that bad, and you are never, ever going to get rid of her. I would rather deal with a Democrat for 6 years and then finally get some sanity back than to have to deal with her for 12, 18 more years. She is a total disaster. It should tell you something that Murkowski, Collins, whatever. Don't even waste your time on Collins. I'm serious. She is what she is. She gets elected all the time in Maine. Murkowski's a different story. We should have a diehard up there. We should have a Ted Cruz, Mike Lee type up there. And we don't. Doesn't it tell you something that her and Murkowski and Elizabeth Warren are leveling the same attacks against Pete Hegseth? That's who Lisa Murkowski is. Here's Pocahontas, again with the fairy tale that Pete is some kind of out-of-control drunk. I have known Pete Hegseth 10 years. Whatever. I've told you this 1,000 times. The story is bullshit. And everybody who knows him will tell you. Check this out.
We cannot trust the safety of our country to someone who has demonstrated repeatedly using very bad judgment with alcohol and doing it in ways that truly have incapacitated him. This is not a moment to take that kind of risk with our national security. And I hope that all 53 Republicans are thinking very hard about that.
You know, the only person on video making really bad decisions about alcohol is Elizabeth Warren. Do you remember? Thank you guys for pulling this up, Jim. This was genius. Do you remember Elizabeth Warren in maybe the cringiest moment of the election cycle? Hey, do you want a beer? Like it was totally, this woman hasn't, this is the fakest, this is the only woman on tape with cringy alcohol moments. Check this out.
I'm glad for everybody who's joining this video. It's great to hear from you. Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me a beer. Hey, Glover, my husband Bruce is now in here. You want a beer?
No, I'll pass on the beer for now.
You sure? Okay, stay along.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, have you ever seen that video? The freaking cringiest thing. I love when she asked the husband, hey, you want a beer? I'll pass on the beer for now. By the way, she looks like the twist off thing is hilarious. It was probably a pop off top and she didn't even know or something like that. The woman is a total mess. If you're agreeing with Elizabeth Warren and you're Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, you're probably doing it wrong. Folks, the woman is a disgrace. She is a total mess. And to the citizens of Alaska who listen to my show or on the radio over there, please, you have got to get rid of her politically. She needs to be removed from that office. She is terrible. She kills the Republican cause in what should be a blood red seat. That's an easy vote for Pete. Shameful. Folks, thanks for tuning in, tolerating my destroyed vocal cords. The inauguration funk caught us all. I hope Andrew Klavan feels better. I saw on Daily Wire on X, he said he was taking a day off for the first time in a while. But a lot of people, I think, standing out in the cold. By the way, the cold weather doesn't really cause colds, but you tend to touch your nose more because you get a lot of like mucus and everything. So I think that's what happened. You shake a bunch of hands, you're touching your face, you get all sick. So everybody came back sick with the funk from the inauguration. Michael thinks it was a Joe Biden bioweapon sprayed above the city, so all of us came back with the funk. But Michael, unbelievably, he must have an immune system like freaking Wolverine. He was like sick for a day and that was it. Poor Evita's dying. Did you see her on her show today? She's like coughing up a storm. She had to apologize like 1,000 times, but she banged out a great show.
Welcome
Welcome to Tucker Carlson Today. Michael Tracy is an independent journalist. And when we say independent, we mean actually independent. Michael Tracy works for nobody but his own readers. He writes for Substack. He writes on Substack, not for Substack. He's all over social media. And even if you think that Twitter is repulsive and part of the reason that America's collapsing, it still might be worth getting the app just to read Michael Tracy. So who is this man? Is he a model for journalism in the future? Where did he come from exactly? And what's he doing next? All those questions we hope will be answered because we have Michael Tracy in the studio with us today. Michael Tracy, thanks so much for coming on.
Good to be here. I really have to apologize that I persist in drawing your attention to Twitter.
There's nothing I hate more than Twitter.
I know. I feel ashamed.
Well, I'm the one. Twitter's like cigarettes. You know you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. Actually, I got a lot more out of cigarettes than I got out of Twitter. But
heavily regulated by the government.
Heavily regulated by the government. Actually, I trust Philip Morris much more than Jack Dorsey any day. No, honestly, people text me your tweets, and because I do try and stay off it, just so I can remain pure and monkish. And I've been reading you for about 5 years now. And I've always wondered, like, who is this guy and where did he come from? He wasn't on my class at Columbia Journalism School. We weren't on the New York Times Metro desk together. Just kidding. Where did you come from?
I have no AEI sinecure.
You're not even a fellow at AEI. Yeah. So who are you? Where are you from? How did you start in this?
Well, I'm going to do a long, drawn-out sigh because it's hard to know where to begin. I'm from New Jersey.
Okay.
You know, I never thought of journalism, quote unquote, as something that was even really available to me. The way that journalism education works, at least at an undergraduate level in the US, is that journalism students are cloistered off into these kind of subgroups where if you're a journalism major, if you take on a journalism major as a student, then it's just expected that you'll get a slot at the college newspaper and that you'll get, like mentorship by the journalism professors or whatnot. That never struck me as something that was even accessible to me because of the ways in which that weird dynamic works. Whereas, like, in order to get admission to the club, you have to be seeking out journalism as some kind of credential, or you have to be in at least like the credentialist rat race.
Yes.
So it never was apparent to me that it was something that I was even able to pursue. I was just interested in politics. I was interested from the standpoint of an observer, or even in a way, I guess, a participant.
So you didn't grow up in a world where you didn't grow up in Montclair, New Jersey, where kind of
nearby, but on the periphery, intentionally.
So not everybody's dad in your class was a columnist for the New York Times growing up.
No, I didn't. I wasn't surrounded by dads who had like a private car service into Midtown every day to like opine on stuff on the the morning broadcast or whatever. So it's just not something that you are aware is an option for you unless you make it, I guess, your own, which is what I ultimately
What year
did.
were you at Yale?
1880.
So you didn't come up by the normal path, is what you're saying?
No, I didn't. I started my own magazine in college. I snookered a DC think tank into underwriting that, which I've never fully owned up to, but I guess now I'm doing it.
What think tank?
It was the Center for American Progress.
No way.
Yes. Well, there was a time when actually, almost admirably, they were funding college, quote-unquote progressives to start magazines and newspapers and stuff without a whole lot of oversight, which, is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it is.
Among college
I bet
students.
They deeply regret doing that for you.
Yes. Yeah. I think, once Neera Tanden blocked me on Twitter, I think that came full circle. She was the head of the Center for American Progress. Infamously.
Yes, famously.
I know you're aware of that, but maybe all your, more sane viewers might not be fully acquainted with the intricacies of the Center for American Progress. But they did fund my magazine, and that whetted my appetite. Where we would just report on local, very very hyper local corruption type issues.
Yeah.
Commentary. I was in constant war with the main newspaper on the campus. The people who worked for it loathed me because, for example, I remember we exposed that they kind of totally had misspent their funds. and we're seeking a bailout from the administration. I mean, it's funny the kind of issues that bubble up in miniature on a campus context, especially if where you're going is a publicly funded university, so it has like a more of a taxpayer. It's of interest to taxpayers indirectly or directly, I guess. What goes on there, and the main newspaper actually seeking a bailout because of their own mismanagement of funds, and no one would have ever known if I didn't get a leak, from somebody inside and reported it. So once you kind of get that exposure to what it can be to do journalism, I guess I call it the bug, to use another cliche, and just kind of percolated outwards since then. And it's hard because I can't really hold myself up as a model. Number one, that would be very self-aggrandizing. Number two, I don't know how to exactly model what I've done or how to achieve what I've achieved. It's not as though there was a concretely delineated path that I followed that I could then recommend to others or try to model for aspiring journalists or whatever. I mean, most people who aspire toward journalism shouldn't do it.
That's demonstrably true.
Because they act as a herd, or they have this pack mentality that is not conducive at all to decent journalism, decent analysis. So whenever I'm asked what should I do, I would say number one, if you can exhaust every other option, do that. And then if there's nothing else that you could conceive of yourself doing, then you have to kind of jump into the deep end of trying to do something journalism or media oriented. But I mean, look at the main offerings of who's on the journalistic menu these days. It's not that enticing or appetizing. So
I did an interview recently with someone in journalism. Seems like a perfectly nice person, who went to Harvard, and midway through the interview, I thought, this person's kind of dumb. I mean, not like mouth breather dumb, or not, like head injury dumb, but kind of dumb, actually.
Or so unremarkable that dumb is sort of an instinct that you have when you're evaluating.
Right. I mean, speaking entirely in cliches and pre-masticated phrases that someone handed to her and she dutifully repeats. No independent thinking whatsoever. No ability to analyze anything critically. Kind of dumb. And this person went to Harvard and works at a prestigious journalism outlet, and I'm thinking maybe the system itself is really flawed, perhaps irredeemably.
Yeah, because what it incentivizes is the ability to placate elite kind of sources of validation. So right. if you can exhibit that you're able to mouth certain platitudes that at least have the superficial air of wisdom about them, then you're likely to probably ascend through the journalistic ranks. There's no encouragement toward independence of thought, really, unless you want to be perceived as an outcast or be constantly fighting with different antagonists in the media, which requires a certain personality type. If your personality type is more oriented toward conformism and going along to get along, then there's a place for you in the journalism industry, but that's never really been my disposition at all, which is why I was required to forge a much different path than the generic
And I want to ask
you
that in one sentence, but I just want to pause and I want you to validate my belief that conformity is the antithesis of journalism. I thought the whole point of journalism was to challenge the existing order, to sort of, tap on the timbers and see if they're sound. Isn't that the whole point of it?
Well, if you're a journalist, as your profession, or as a matter of you receiving your compensation, you're supposed to have the time, resources, ability, and desire to dissect popularly believed nostrums.
Yes.
In a way that the average person just cannot, because they're occupied with other things.
Right.
For their own livelihood.
Right.
And yet, more and more, what you see is that journalists are themselves the engines of that kind of false consensus, rather than the opponents of it, rather than the people breaking down the fallacious premises that underlie that false consensus.
Nicely put.
And it seems to me it's totally antithetical to what journalism ought to be. Like, just to give you an example that's sadly tethered to the current news cycle. I don't know if you've seen it or heard it yet, but Andrew Cuomo just resigned. And look, I have no positive feeling.
For the record, I did not know that.
Okay.
This is the first moment I'm hearing it. Yeah.
Well, I'm breaking the news to you. You'll always remember me now.
Independent journalist breaking the news.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And look, I have no affinity for Andrew Cuomo. I've disdained him for years, going back when I covered different campaigns of his, 2014, et cetera. So I don't view Andrew Cuomo as somebody who needs defending. However, I view manufactured consensus as something that needs rebutting.
I totally agree. Sorry, I just have to interject 1 second.
Okay.
I don't know what you're about to say, but I suspect I'm going to agree with it. I know Andrew Cuomo. I've known him for more than 20 years. I knew him since he was HUD secretary in the Clinton administration. He's a totally weird guy with authoritarian impulses.
Megalomaniacal.
Totally. Super insecure, kind of crazy. Not stupid, I will say. But, and I think there are a lot of things you could criticize about his tenure as governor, which has been long and not good in my view. But what they're attacking him for, there's BS at the core of it. Anyway, I would just pause.
Right. And you might be able to ascertain that there was at least some BS at the core of the basis for these attacks.
Yeah.
If you actually read the report that was put out, that was supposed to be this bombshell, revelation, I read it. I don't think anybody else read it. This was an attorney general
You're the
report.
only one, man.
I mean, granted, you have to have sort of a weird temperament to want to read an attorney general report that painstakingly goes through all the purported sexual wrongdoing committed by Andrew Cuomo. So I accept that, but then again, I get paid to do this.
That's
so
your
I did
job,
it.
right?
Yeah, it's my job. So I did it, and okay, so accuser number 2, right? And we don't want to spend a whole tangent on Andrew Cuomo.
No, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear what you said.
Okay, so accuser number 2 is arguably the most significant Cuomo accuser because when she came out with her claims, it gave the impression that it was this mounting scandal, like a snowball effect, right? Because, once you have more than one person coming out in public and making allegations, it kind of gives credence, supposedly, to what's being alleged, right? Accuser number 2's central claim is that as a professional adult political operative who worked in the governor's office, she was, quote, groomed by Cuomo. Her interpretation of Cuomo's overtures or conduct toward her was such that she later says she came to believe that she was being groomed by him. Now, grooming is a concept ordinarily that gets applied to adults preying on children to kind of habituate them into becoming receptive to sexual advances, right? But this is an adult appropriating the kind of nomenclature of grooming to apply to Cuomo.
Well, you're taking language seriously.
Well, I mean, I would think that we should be a little bit specific or a little bit discerning when we're dealing with allegations like this, because guess what? It gets enshrined as precedent down the line, so it could affect somebody else you might hold in higher esteem than Cuomo. Right. And so, now that he's resigned, it's almost going to be taken as an article of faith that we are compelled hereby to just believe any adult who says they were groomed by a political figure. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. She wasn't even alleging any illicit physical conduct necessarily. She was just giving her interpretation as this activist-inclined, progressive operative who ended up in the governor's close orbit. And it's just, look, I know that it can be gratifying to come out and say, yeah, we cheer for the downfall of Cuomo, and maybe that is, there is some, gratification there if you have pent-up resentment toward him.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in probing logical incongruities and the bases for the false consensus that ends up such that we're all kind of ensnared by these new moral totems around us that seem to have been erected overnight.
Which are never explained
either.
No one ever sits down and says, okay, here are the rules, here's what we believe, here's why we believe it, here's the penalty for disagreeing or disobeying. No one ever makes it clear. It's like out of nowhere, all of a sudden, you're not allowed to criticize Simone Biles, but nobody tells you why, you're just not. Shut up. It's like these orthodoxies arise out of nowhere. Is there a committee or a department that comes up with them?
Are they in the basement of the Yale drama department or something? If so, we should go take a road trip there and try to interrogate them. I mean, that's where it does seem like it emanates from, though. It's like that mentality, which then gets kind of laundered into the media. And then the media, because they are conformists at heart, and you can't rock the boat too much if you want to maintain your job and your prestige, they end up being the enforcers of these new orthodoxies, and they can't even really give you an argument as to why these orthodoxies suddenly materialize without notice. And if you're left behind by the materialization of those new orthodoxies, too bad for you.
Yeah, I mean if
you're the collateral damage.
If you went on like a really long vacation to the headwaters of the Amazon and came back to your job at the Washington Post, like you could get fired.
Right. Sometimes it's like you could just go on a week vacation. and there might have been a moral revolution that you just missed out on because you weren't checking Twitter.
So this is obviously a long-form show to get to the deeper issues, but I just can't resist, since you're here and you've broken this news on the set and you are in the New York world. Maybe you know the answer to this. What do you think this is really about with Cuomo? I don't even have a good guess.
Well, Cuomo himself, when he was Attorney General, he clearly used that office as a launching pad to seek the governorship. It's nothing new. And, you know, Letitia James is very well positioned to now become the Democratic nominee for governor in 2022. Is it as nakedly simple as that she's just ambitious and was using this as kind of a launch pad like Cuomo once did when Eliot Spitzer was governor? I don't know, but she can cite that she was now this incredible champion for women, and it's going to be presumed that she would be the front runner to succeed Cuomo. I mean,
that's such an obvious...
does it redound to that? In all respects, I don't know, but that's sometimes the simplest explanation is the most plausible.
I would say very often, and I'm embarrassed even that I asked you the question because that's so clearly the right answer. Yeah. I should have thought of it myself. But that's why you're the guest.
Letitia James, this was amazing. And I said we weren't going to go on a Cuomo tangent, but here I am continuing the tangent. In her press conference last week, she said that one of the purposes of her investigation, which Cuomo, in fairness, did grant her the ability to conduct, so that was a self-inflicted wound, perhaps. But she said one of the purposes of her investigation was to demonstrate why New Yorkers should, quote, believe women. And it's just, okay, so that's really not consistent with any semblance of due process. This is the Attorney General of a state going before the public at a press conference and just declaring that the governor violated the law, had committed acts of law breaking. Well, and therefore said she was going to take no prosecutorial action.
I was going to say, then why isn't he indicted? I thought when you broke the law, you got isn't that our legal system?
Well, apparently you could just decree law breaking as the chief law enforcement official of a state, take no further action, and nobody even draws attention to it.
But you effect a penalty, which is his resignation.
She effected a political penalty, and now I think she will probably incur the political benefits from that going forward. And it was a brilliant move. It worked spectacularly, apparently.
So that's a scary enough perversion of our system that it's got me effectively defending Andrew Cuomo, who I despise.
Likewise.
Right. So that's there's a lot at stake here, and it doesn't detract from what you just said to note that what you're saying is actually very obvious. The reason it's got my jaw hanging open is because you're the only one who's saying it. So, shouldn't everyone else be saying this?
And again, a lot of it seems very trivially obvious. Like, why should I be? I mean, I don't know if I'm literally the only person saying it, but I haven't seen anybody else saying it who has any kind of media platform.
Right.
But it's trivial obvious because then I didn't have to do intrepid investigative journalism to figure it out. I read the report. I spoke to like one or two constitutional scholars who said that they never had seen precedent for what the Attorney General of New York did last week. So it's not like I needed to do like mental jujitsu or anything to kind of arrive at these seemingly obvious conclusions, but a lot of times just doing what appears painfully obvious is enough to buck orthodoxies.
Yes.
Like, we were going to get into this whole trip I did last summer to view the aftermath of the riots of 2020, right, which very few others did. And even it's over a year later now that I returned from that trip. I did a 2-month trip around the country talking to people who were affected by the riots, right? Mostly non-whites. And that trip received a huge amount of attention, even though, to me, it seemed trivially obvious. Like, I just
Who were you working for at the time?
No one.
Right. So that, to me, that's why I wanted, that's why I became one of your big admirers, even if we disagree on things, which I assume we do, you don't even work for anybody. Yeah. You don't even, strictly speaking, have a job. You just decided to commit journalism completely on your own with no budget other than your own money, and you ended up producing.
I mean, I was able to do that trip, for example, which was, costly enough.
Yeah.
Not because I had some inheritance, but because readers and viewers funded me over.
Well, exactly.
The internet.
No, but I'm just saying, like, if you're the richest man in the world owns the local newspaper in Washington, D.C., there's no limit to the budget, the news budget there. And they have a huge news hole. They have great distribution, part of Amazon. So, like, why weren't they doing that? Why did it fall to you?
And there's a paradox there, right? Because the protests last summer were heralded by the New York Times and probably the Washington Post as the largest protest movement in United States history. Now, if true, and it's plausible to me that it's true,
yes,
that's a huge, momentous event. And yet it was kind of just on its face denied that the riot component could have been of a similar scope, even though it didn't take me long to go find examples of post-riot activity that hadn't even been covered at all. Like, I went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, just because I happened to be traversing, that part of the country, right? And I thought, could it be possible that there were actually riots in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and nobody really mentioned it? And sure enough, there was a riot in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that exceeded anything that the locals could remember happening in decades. So I said, okay, this is a phenomenon that really is of such a scope that it seems probably accurate that the movement was the largest in U.S. history, but we're going to appreciate and herald and trumpet that constantly, but we're not going to also evaluate this other side of it and put it in context and maybe write an Atlantic cover story on the riots of 2020. Did that cover story ever get written? No, it didn't. Even though, the scale of this social phenomenon definitely warranted it. It took me, funded by readers and viewers, in a car to just go around and talk to people and try to make sense of it. And again, that impulse of mine seemed like it was trivially obvious. Like, I didn't think I was ever going to get the actual, get a sense of the actual significance of what had transpired if I just relied on secondhand accounts in the media or on Twitter or whatever. I had to go do it for myself to the greatest extent possible.
What did you find? And where did you go? Just describe the overview of the trip.
Well, I started in New York. I went across the entire country and back. I went, to Philadelphia, Chicago, Minneapolis was obviously the hub of it. And I would just put out, for example, in Minneapolis, I did a thread on Twitter, which, has its downsides, but sometimes it does enable you to get out some reasonably good information. I did a thread from Minneapolis just chronicling the rubble and debris and devastation that was on display if you just happened to go take a look at what was happening in Minneapolis. And people were stunned. Like, they hadn't even known that a major American city had undergone this level of destruction. And how is it that I was required to fill that informational void, given the huge amount of focus and attention that were on the protests at that point? Like, it wasn't even, again, it didn't require me doing any kind of extravagant investigative reporting. It required me getting in a car and going around and talking to people. So that's why, I keep coming back to all these orthodoxies just being so predicated on fallacy and so predicated on just deceit often, that they can often be rebutted by doing the most simple journalistic tasks. It's just that so much of the media environment now precludes carrying out those tasks if you want to remain in good standing and be employed at one of the major institutions and not, be targeted with, social media censure.
If you can ignore and effectively cover up the largest outbreak of political violence in 50 years, probably since '68, since the riots in April after Martin Luther King's assassination, if you can kind of pretend that's not happening, you kind of got to ask why. Like, why would you do that? Because for one thing, if it used to be in the news business, when I started in it, the bias was always toward something dynamic happening. Change, violence is the most dynamic and the most interesting. That's why boxing was once popular, right? Yeah. So you covered violence, even if you had views about the motives of the people committing it, you covered it because, like, how could you not cover that?
Yeah.
So to not cover it tells you that something really big is going on. What do you think this is about?
Well, yeah, I mean, if something historic was happening,
then
you as a journalist should be falling over yourself to be at the forefront of, documenting history, right?
Of course.
Right? But it just didn't happen. And I've also used the word cover up to describe that dynamic from last summer. But I don't use the word cover up to suggest really a concerted conspiracy.
Right.
I just use it to indicate that what happened was the culmination of this herd mentality, of like epistemic closure. Remember when liberals used to say the conservatives were suffering under these delusions of what they called epistemic closure, meaning that they inhabited these media environments that were closed off to countervailing opinions and and facts and such. And there's there was probably some truth to that. But whatever epistemic closure happened here was on a much grander scale and was much more decisive in closing off avenues of inquiry such that we've been deprived of any kind of real understanding of this major event in American history.
Yes.
I don't think most people are even aware that these were the most widespread and destructive riots in 50 plus years. I think that simple fact alone has been covered up. So, like, if that can be covered up, then what can't be? I mean, it's...
Well, that's how I feel.
It's disturbing, and it shouldn't be even disturbing from any particular ideological standpoint. It should be disturbing from just, like, sheer empiricism. Like, if that's what you're most interested in, which journalists should theoretically be interested in, then that this could be effectuated with such ease should alarm you to your core, and that it doesn't, I think, it proves that whatever you're doing, it's probably not journalism in any recognizable sense, and if it is, then the definition of journalism has radically changed. So we are not going to treat you. You should expect to be treated radically differently.
What do they? Do you know people who work at legacy media outlets, at the big newspapers, at TV networks? What do they think of you?
I know some. I don't think most particularly care for me, to put it mildly.
Why?
Well, I know that one of the labels I get that gets applied to me is that I'm just contrarian, right? I'm contrarian for its own sake. Or more or less, I'm a troll. Like, I'm just trying to get a rise out of people. I don't believe what it is I'm saying. I just try to basically swindle people out of their money using some elaborate scheme that I don't really know the full how I'm able to accomplish that. But that's the charge against me, right? And it goes back to this whole question of challenged orthodoxy. I mean, I've never said something just for its own sake, just because I think it would be funny to get people upset. I think that we're living in an environment right now that is so suffuse with kind of illogical constructions that it's morally incumbent on me to be, quote, contrary toward those constructions.
Well, yeah.
Or else I wouldn't be able to live with that myself. I would just do something else. I would do PR. Or I would be somebody's, spokesperson where I could just turn off my critical faculties and just regurgitate whatever the latest conventional wisdom is.
I mean, it tells you a lot about the people who
I think a lot of it is envy. I mean, frankly, it's got to be miserable to be working at one of these institutions. Let's say you do have a modicum of critical thought that you're able to employ at times, but you're always walking on eggshells. If there's somebody looking over your shoulder, if you make some transgression that was just declared to be a transgression, last month, then that could result in you losing your financial security, losing your reputation. And so if there's this kind of cohort of people, myself included, who are able to operate outside those constraints, I think that's going to produce a fair amount of envy. Not that they want to be me, but they would like to have the freedom that I have, and they don't, and so that manifests as rage and anger.
Yeah, because they really are leaving their dignity and self-respect at the door when they take a check from the Washington Post, in my opinion. So tell us about the mechanics of your life. So people like you didn't exist. I don't mean your personal life, but I mean people like you didn't exist.
Yeah, let's not go there.
3 years ago. It's as independent as your journalism. No, but you couldn't do what you are doing just like the other day, but now you are doing it. Totally blunt. Can you make a living on Substack?
I can. I am at the moment. But then again, it's not as though there's a formula that's universalizable or something.
Well, needless to say.
Yeah. So I can only really speak for myself, but I can, and I have other, sources of income beyond Substack as well. So I'm actually somewhat diversified, believe it or not, which is crazy because it actually does demonstrate that there's an audience or an appetite for the kind of independent journalism analysis that hopefully I provide. And I think that audience is growing. And so I'm not a pessimist. Even as stagnant and insufferable as like the Washington Post is, it doesn't mean that there isn't this whole other universe out there that's available to you if you want to if you want to pursue it.
But the key is, can you make a living doing it? I mean, it's great to just sit around and be free and give your opinions, but that's not a job. It sounds like you've found a way to have a job.
Yeah.
Being as honest as you can be and doing exactly what you want to do. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah. I can personally make a living with it, but I have a particular life trajectory that led me to a very unique circumstance. And so, I said just before that there's reasons for optimism, but if there's reason for pessimism, it's that my circumstance is very, very, very unique. And I think we need more people who have a spirit of independence about them, who have a place in media, because the media is very important. Like it or not, I mostly don't like it. But it really does shape the views of the populace to a disturbingly large extent.
I know, and I mean, I've been in media all my life. I grew up, and my dad was in it, so I've been in my whole life, and I never really understood how powerful it was until the last few years.
Yeah.
And so the idea that the worst people in America, the least imaginative, least creative, most fearful, most herd-oriented, have this much power is terrifying to me. And that's one of the reasons I find your life so inspiring. I don't subscribe to the New York Times, the Washington Post anymore. I'm not sending them $1. I transfer that money to Substack, and I read a bunch of different people, including you. Yeah. And do you think that's an actual model for the future? I want it to be.
Yeah, I know. We're governed by the whims of people with severe personality disorders.
Yes.
And it's just like they're holding everyone hostage.
Who's that chick at the New York Times who's so clearly damaged? I can never remember her name.
I know.
The social media reporter?
Yeah, we shouldn't mention her name because I think it might re-traumatize
We go to
her.
jail or something. But but the idea that someone
the U.S. Marshals will burst through the door.
Well, she's so desperately unhappy and unbalanced, and that person has power? What?
Yeah. I mean, don't you work at the most what's reputed to be the most powerful newspaper in the world, and you're 38 or something?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're that damaged, then maybe you need help. I mean, but the public, it's not the public's responsibility to help you. You're supposed to be serving the public. So, I mean, we're not your psychiatrist, but it seems like it seems like the relationship between the media and even politicians to some extent and the public has been inverted, where they're demanding psychiatric assistance from the general public, and that's not something that can ever be provided, but it allows them to posture as having this weird moral elevated status that they never earned.
The overclass are the victims.
Yes.
So every time I hear Michelle Obama from one of her many oceanfront estates telling us that we're bad and she can't go outside because she's so afraid of us and she's oppressed, I'm like, is it? But you're in charge, actually. What are you talking about? How did you get to be a victim?
Yeah, one of my favorite arguments for vaccination now is that if you don't get vaccinated, you're causing slight discomfort to the elites in Nantucket who would prefer, that it'd be nice if others around them were vaccinated, the people serving them on their oceanfront estates. It's nicer for them from a perspective of just personal comfort if you're vaccinated.
So get the servants vaccinated.
Yeah.
So totally fair.
Yeah.
Well, boy, I hadn't even thought about the vaccine question. Now, leaving aside your own personal views on vaccines, And I guess we're required to preface all conversations on topics like, I'm for vaccines.
Yeah.
What do you make of the media coverage of vaccines?
Well, I mean, I am personally vaccinated. I've said it a million times, but it doesn't matter. Because if you question any aspect of the virulently pro-vaccine narrative and how it's manifested, then that gets automatically twisted that you're anti-vaccine. No, I received it. I'm not against it. What I'm against, again, to continue on the theme, are these kind of manufactured orthodoxies that don't hold up to scrutiny. Like, so when you get this talking point that was just, came out of thin air a few weeks ago, that it's only Republicans who are holding back the country to achieving, glorious full vaccinated status, that's just not true. Like, I was in Philadelphia last week, right, doing some reporting that's yet to come out, but I'll give a preview in that the most unvaccinated zip codes in the city of Philadelphia are the heavily black zip codes. It's just, those aren't Republicans who are like reading Breitbart.
Right.
Those are people who are in their own information ecosystem. It has nothing to do with like what, Ron DeSantis says.
No.
And yet it's so much easier to just focus on the culture war or partisan element of this, because it gives you this air of moral and political superiority. And that, I think, talking about like what drives the people who are in the overclass or who run the media, I think their operating principle is to flaunt at every possible opportunity their perceived moral and political superiority, which of course is totally unearned and ridiculous. But that's what drives them.
It's also not really governing.
No, it's not governing.
I mean, convincing the people you're in charge of that you're a better person than they are, that's not really kind of your job. You're supposed to be making their lives better, no? Isn't that?
Right. Or even if you're in the media, right, like, you're not supposed to be so self-assured that it's just obvious to you that you have this vaunted place in, like, the moral hierarchy. Like, maybe a little bit more humility would make sense. Like, I'm not the most humble person in the world, probably, and people could maybe cite examples when I haven't fulfilled that ideal, right? But I try to understand people's life circumstances. Like, I try to maybe filter their apprehensions in the most sympathetic possible light, so at least they can be better understood. And that's presumably something you'd want to do with the, quote, unvaccinated. By the way, it's very creepy that they've made the unvaccinated like this new social class or something. As though they have like common interests.
In the like, unvaccinated community.
Like, or they're going to like start a lobbying outfit or something. But that's an example like where this media kind of malice, I would say, or this media cloistered environment really obstructs the ability to understand an important social phenomenon, which is why in the country where, Donald Trump, to his credit, provided or, instituted the process whereby this vaccine became universally available, why is it that we still have millions upon millions upon millions who haven't gotten the free shot against an infectious disease? And that's a kind of an obviously interesting phenomenon to probe. But a lot of people in the media just don't have like the mental resources to probe it in any way beyond heaping moral scorn on their perceived inferiors.
Right. I mean, I would add that to the list of unsolved mysteries that we probably should unravel. Like, how did Trump get elected?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Did
Why
we ever
are
answer that
people?
one?
I keep reading these stories about how hospitals. There's one in Houston yesterday. Were demanding that doctors and nurses get the vaccine. The president said, "I'm demanding that doctors and nurses at the VA get the vaccine." The headline to me is, wait, doctors and nurses haven't gotten the vaccine?
Yeah.
Why would a frontline healthcare worker not get the vaccine? I don't know the answer. What is the answer? Shouldn't we find out? Like, you can't say they're uninformed. Yeah. They're treating COVID, but they refuse to get the vaccine. Why? On what grounds?
Yeah, I did a Substack article last week based on an email that a reader sent to me that was fascinating. And the email basically laid out a theory for why we have disparate rates of vaccination among different socioeconomic classes.
Right.
So this person works at a major Fortune 500 company, And the person, and I'm going to try to be gender neutral here, not for PC reasons, but because I want to preserve the person's anonymity to the greatest extent possible. But the person interacts daily with executives at this company and also hourly workers. And with almost 100% compliance, the executives are vaccinated, whereas the factory workers are vaccinated at like a 15% rate. This is what the person estimated.
Wow.
And it's that's true according to this person. And obviously, I verified his identity and everything. I just said it was a he. That's okay. I verified the identity of this person, and according to him, this trend is consistent across racial groups. So you have facilities in the Midwest where the factory workers are overwhelmingly white, in the Deep South where they're overwhelmingly black, in the West where it's mixed race, heavily Hispanic. And according to him, it's the same rate of very negligible vaccination across the board. And so the theory that was proffered, which sounds very sensible to me, but I haven't seen it even presented as a possibility in the popular media, is that your predilection to get vaccinated, if you belong to a certain institution, correlates with your likelihood of ascending through the ranks of that institution.
Right.
Like to be vaccinated as an executive means that you're giving some kind of solidarity to your kind of corporate structure. Whereas if you're in a dead-end job and you have no real affinity or connection to the institution that's trying to incentivize vaccination, then you might buck the vaccination decrees just as like a screw you to your authorities, right? Because you have no reason really, as if you're making $15 an hour or less, to give in to any kind of effort at like fostering corporate cohesion or anything.
Right.
You're not invested emotionally or professionally in the corporate structure, except as it makes you a basic living. So I think socioeconomic status really is a hugely important and overlooked factor in these disparate vaccination rates, but it's really not covered. And why isn't it covered? Well, it comes back to the media critique. The people who occupy all these elite media institutions, they're from the same socioeconomic stratum in large part.
But they don't see this as what it really is, which is a downvote on their leadership. So if I'm running vaccine propaganda for the Biden administration, I'm seeing the actual numbers and who's getting the shot and who isn't. I'm saying people below a certain economic education threshold are tuning us out. Mm-hmm. Black people in large numbers, Hispanic people, but working class white people too. We've thrown everything we can at them and they're still not doing it. They just don't trust us at all. Yeah. That would be my read on it. Wouldn't it be yours?
Well, I would think that it should at least necessitate some kind of self-critique.
You would think.
But the ironic thing is that notwithstanding that widespread rejection, it doesn't occasion any self-critique. It occasions just more intensified scolding and moral and flaunting of moral superiority. It doesn't work
with most people I know. If it's so great, why are you yelling at me? Why are you attacking? What did I do? I didn't create COVID in a lab in Wuhan. Why are you in my face? Like, what is this? Yeah. Does that make you want to take the shot more? Probably not.
No, but again, it reinforces, and I'm repeating myself, but it reinforces your unearned sense of moral and political superiority. And I think they're so intoxicated by that sense that they don't even recognize it as their driving impetus for so much of these seemingly incomprehensible rhetorical strategies. Like, why would constant scorn and ridicule accomplish what you're saying you want to accomplish? Since when does that produce the desired effect? Right? It doesn't. So what is it accomplishing?
Yeah.
It's accomplishing something within themselves.
No, it's totally right.
That is divorced from the actual outcomes that they claim they're pursuing.
I hate you. I find you morally repugnant, exactly. And I demand that you trust me.
I demand you accede to my will. Like, okay, sure.
So tell us about Tulsi Gabbard, Who is Tulsi Gabbard? And I'm asking because you've covered Tulsi Gabbard. I know that you know Tulsi Gabbard, and that you've talked to her a lot about who she is and what she believes. Tulsi Gabbard occupies this very interesting place in American politics. But I'm going to let you describe who she is and what she stands for.
Yeah. Well, I think there's much to say. But I think one thing that's probably most relevant is that she's the closest thing we've come lately to an ideological fusion candidate.
Yes.
In that, if you would go to any one of her events over the course of the 2020 campaign, they genuinely were the most ideologically diverse campaign events that I've ever seen. In that you'd have roughly, sometimes almost equal attendance by, liberals, Democrats, conservatives, libertarians, in equal number. So if that is happening, it should really prompt some more comprehensive inquiry into how you bring about a coalition of that kind. And I think she has a similar sensibility as maybe I do, even though it doesn't get transmuted into any kind of journalistic endeavor. But she seems like she's kind of innately unwilling to accede to certain kind of orthodox dictates. And I think that's that's very unusual for a politician, because it gets you lumped in. I mean, she's a Democrat, right? And if there's a faction of your support base that is avowedly not sympathetic with the Democratic Party, then that could be pointed to tarnish you. And she doesn't care. And that's a unique personality type.
So you think it goes back, so she's, like, her success is her toughness, basically. You're saying she gets attacked and it doesn't change her.
I think her success is her not being affected at all by or at least not being inordinately affected by the extremely, tendentious caricatures of her that are put out there.
I don't think I've seen anybody in a long time, maybe Trump, I guess, but attacked with the viciousness that they attacked Tulsi Gabbard, who, I don't agree with her on everything, that's for sure, but I never saw her as a threat to my life or the country or anything. Trump, I can kind of see why, Trump gets people spun up.
Yeah.
But Tulsi Gabbard got him almost as spun up. She's kind of a gentle soul. She's a vegetarian. I mean, I don't think she's going to be showing up at my house demanding I change the way I live.
Throughout her campaign, she was surrounded by, vegan acoustic guitar players.
Right, exactly, like hippies from Hawaii.
Yeah.
But she
wearing like brown shirts or something.
Yeah. So what about what she was saying enraged the establishment?
I actually think the Trump analog is somewhat illustrative, right? Because Trump clearly at times was attempting to antagonize his opponents to create a reaction or what have you. But she is so much more mild-mannered.
Yes.
That the incredibly extreme response to her seemed totally out of proportion with what she projects on a personal level.
Hillary Clinton said she was, quote, being groomed by the Russians.
Right. Another misuse of the grooming term to go call back to the Cuomo discussion. But I think that incredibly outsized hostility derives from, or has its genesis in, this her ability to fashion a very different kind of coalition that is not tethered to either major political party, and it couldn't be, if it were to come to its full fruition, if she maybe had some more positive media attention, it could grow that support base further. That would be a genuine threat to the existing political structure. And also there's a huge foreign policy dimension. She expressly rebuked bipartisan regime change operations that you just couldn't really question before. I mean, whether it be Syria or Venezuela, And she did it from a standpoint of somebody who had direct military experience. So you couldn't just, knock her down as like a wild-eyed activist or something. But particularly on the left, I mean, the Syria issue meant that you're going to have these kind of like almost decade-long antagonists who think that you are, if you reject the premise of the American regime change ambition in Syria, then that ipso facto makes you a sympathizer for the ruler of Syria. I mean, it was such a nonsensical charge from the beginning, but it also made people circle the wagons.
What I never understood is why am I required to hate Bashar al-Assad? I don't have any feelings about Bashar al-Assad. Last time I checked, our media were celebrating him as this kind of urbane doctor educated in London, but whatever. So, Teen Vogue loved him 10 years ago. They hate him now. But why should I have to take any position on this? And if I like him, why is that bad? Or dislike? I mean, what is this?
His wife was some international beauty 10 years ago. Right?
I remember this really well. I had little interest in it then. I have little interest in it now. But shouldn't I be able to reserve the right to have my own opinions about foreign leaders if I want? I am an American.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the more pressing matter is to have an opinion about what American taxpayer dollars are doing.
Well, exactly.
Like, in the policy dimension is more important than whether you have a personal liking toward.
But they make everything personal. Oh, you
Yeah.
love the dictator. What?
Yeah. Ultimately, though, I think what made her unique and continues to make her unique is that she scrambles ordinary partisan assumptions in a way that makes people very unsettled.
Yes.
And that has a foreign policy element. It has an element in terms of her attitude toward the culture wars, where she, I think, was the only Democratic candidate to actually fashion a critique of some of these kind of hyper-moralizing, revolutionary tendencies that leave a lot of normal people in the lurch if they're not hip to the latest, talking points on a given week. And so that created all those were ingredients to kind of create a political personage that, notwithstanding her relative mild-manneredness, really cut against a lot of presuppositions about how the two parties should orient themselves.
I don't know what the future brings, but Tulsi Gabbard is a category that's going to persist into the future. So
Yes.
I have to end by asking you this question. So you've went from like this, from my perspective as an outside observer, this kind of guy on Twitter saying interesting things, to being someone who can support himself totally independent of the journalistic establishment. There are a couple other people who seem to be doing that. Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, others, Andrew Sullivan. Do you think in the future people like you would kind of come together and create a new establishment in journalism?
Yeah. I would think so. I would think that would be possible. There have been certain private discussions, perhaps along those lines, but nothing that I could announce right now with any
But is that
certainty.
where it's going, do you think? So why should the New York Times declare itself the most important outlet in the world and the rest of us kind of believe that? Like, what? How can that last?
Well, I think we're in a beginning phase of maybe a restructuring to that end. I think what had to be proven first was that there is a sustainable way to make a living.
Yes.
And then the institution building would probably come afterwards. But clearly there's fertile ground for it. I mean, and it doesn't even have to be. I mean, it ought not to be along ideological lines either.
Well, I totally agree.
I wouldn't want to be a colleague with someone who I agree with about everything and was just going to give me kind of butter me up constantly and tell me how right I am. I want to be challenged and disagreed with, and I think you need to have. It's healthy to live in a non-uniform political environment such as that. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly hobbled by your blind spots.
Heterodoxy is good.
Yeah, the first time you and I ever spoke on TV was about an article that I wrote in 2016 about this gaping blind spot that had emerged about Trump's chances. This was in September of 2016.
Right.
And I think you should build institutions, ideally, that are around an explicit recognition
nối vòng tròn. Hàng đầu tiên móc 18 mũi đơn.